So welcome to my talk on strategizing screenwriting competitions. I will probably talk for half an hour to 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. And until I open it up, try to keep yourselves on mute so it doesn't overlap, but feel free to post questions in the chat. Yes, Sangeeta, thank you for the question. I am in Toronto, Canada, COVID hotspot right now in North America. Here, I'll tell you my story before I start, because a lot of you are here because you've already been my students, but a lot of you are quite new to me. I'm Daniela Sioni, and I have been in the film business for 30 years as a script supervisor, and there's an overlap of about 15 years where I've been a comedy writer. And I very slowly broke into comedy writing. And I've been training comedy writers since 2012. Although I'm specifically a comedy writer, what I have to say about contests will, of course, apply to all genres. But I specifically train people in television and feature film comedy writing. And most of my work experience is in that. Although the film I did win all these awards for this year is more of a magic realism piece, which I'll talk about in a sec. It's a hard one to define. I want to say in 2012, yes, in 2012, I started training students. And in 2014, I started entering screenwriting competitions, had very random, not very much success at all with screenwriting competitions in the past. I'd won, I say 2++, I won 2 solid awards for one script. And I say plus for a second script. I got a quarter finalist and like a semi-finalist that was unofficial, which I can talk about. So those were my past screenwriting wins up until COVID hit. Once at the end of 2019 and all throughout 2020 and earlier this year, as you saw in the landing page for this talk, I won 7 awards and honors, including 3 grand prizes, 2 finalist prizes, and 2 semi-finalist prizes in some pretty major competitions. So I realized I did come into this year with a strategy for screenwriting contests. And the talk I'm going to give today, I already know is very controversial for a lot of people, because I've seen people tweet, "Don't waste your time with contests. They're a waste of money, blah, blah, blah." I might have agreed with that maybe a year and a half ago myself, until I went through the process that I went through this year. So I thought I would share it. And by the way, I noticed my students are succeeding with this same process as well. And many of you are here who are my students and haven't submitted to contests yet. And I hope you can benefit from everything I'm going to say. I'd be the last person to believe the amount of success I had this year. And I'll go through my whole journey, and I'll tell you all the things I learned and what you get when you're a winner and how it's changed my career. And then we'll open it up to questions, and you can feel free to heckle me in the Q&A section. So yes, okay. So the first thing I want to say is that despite all the negative naysayers about comedy screenwriting contests, of which I was one at one point, or sorry, I say comedy, any screenwriting competitions. By the way, early on in my career, I did know someone in Toronto who ran screenwriting competitions as a way to pay his rent. So I'm fully aware that there are these, I don't want to say he's a scam artist, because he was actually legitimately running these contests, but he actually had 0 background in screenwriting. He would run these contests as a way to pay his mortgage, and he made more money than any writer I knew. So there is that element out there of screenwriting competitions. I won't name him or his contest. They're still going, by the way, even though he no longer lives in Toronto. He used all his money to move to LA. So he wasn't necessarily a scammer. They were legitimate contests, but there wasn't anything he could really do for the winners outside of giving them a live read, which is something. Like, giving people a live read is something for your dollar, but we'll talk more about that in a bit. So I understand the hesitancy around screenwriting competitions, because there are a lot of people making a lot of money on this who are not legitimately in the industry, at least not yet. Sometimes they legitimately get into the industry after running a contest for so many years. That's your plot for your next feature. Nice. The screenwriting competition master. I don't know what that title would be. Anyway, so I understand the hesitancy around contests. Also, my wins in the past were so random. Obviously I think we get better as we go along. So maybe I'm a better writer now than I was 4 years ago when I won those other competitions randomly. However, I don't think it's a question of the quality of my writing. I honestly do believe that I approached this year with more of a strategy in how I was approaching contests, which ones I entered, all of the things I'm going to talk about today. And I really do think it made a huge difference as to the number of wins. What I do know is that you can't win if you don't play. It is a little bit of a lottery. There is a little bit of luck involved. You are at the mercy of the readers. You are at the mercy of people's general, biases and tastes. So it's not going to be, there's no guarantee at all. Even if you use all the strategies I'm going to outline today, there's never any guarantee that you're going to win, because you're still at the mercy of so many factors that you have no control over. And as long as you're fine with that, just know that you can't win if you don't play. If you don't write your script in the first place, obviously you're never gonna be able to sell it, because you got to write it first. Usually, sometimes you can sell on a pitch, but usually you got to write it as a new writer. If you never enter a contest, of course, you're never going to win. So you can't win if you don't play. Okay, so that's for sure. So you can conscientiously object to screenwriting competitions, absolutely, and you can absolutely make a career. By the way, I got into the Writers Guild in 2016, not in Writers Guild of Canada, because I'm in Canada, but not because of any contest wins, because I optioned a feature film. Now, I did get that film read because of a contest win. So, okay, theoretically, maybe, but not directly. As long as you can option a feature film or a TV series, you can get into the Writers Guild, right? So that's not contingent on any contest wins. So definitely know that. The first step in winning a competition, it seems like a no-brainer, but I have to state it, is you have to write the best script that you can, because you're competing in a marketplace with a lot of great writers. I bet, and I know because I know some of you, there are a lot of very talented writers right on this call. And so you have to write the absolute best script that you can. And sometimes when we write alone, when we don't have a community of writers around us, it's hard to know, is it contest ready? Right. So because I train comedy writers, we have it built into my program where we idea jam. We idea jam from the premise all the way through to the end of the script. So I think that's one of the reasons my students are doing a lot better this year, because I didn't used to incorporate idea testing all the way through the process as I have in recent years. So I think if you can find a community of people that you trust to run your script by before you submit it to contest and to give you notes on it, that's a great strategy even before you enter the contest. So make sure that you're going in with the best script you can. And by the way, you're going to be rewriting it all the way along. I got 7 awards last year. I kept rewriting with every single win, especially if I got notes. So if you win, you will often get notes, or if you pay for notes, which I almost never do, but if you pay for notes, you will also get really good coverage. And then you can do a rewrite based on that, which I did. So the script just kept getting better and better and better as the year went on. And my last win was the one that brought me the most attention in the US, which we'll talk about at the end. Okay, so idea test, even at your premise stage along the way with a community that you trust. My students have this as part of the program, but you can do it with, like, you can create a writing group with other like-minded writers. No matter how great you think your script is, and listen, I have to remind myself of this too, it can always be better. It can always, even the draft I have right now, which is making its way around LA, it's going to be rewritten 5 more times depending on the production company who buys it, assuming one does. We don't know. But your script can always be better. Scripts are rewritten, by the way, all the way through the production process and through post-production. I teach a feature film comedy writing and directing class. And because I've worked with Paul Feig, I know Paul and Judd and like so many great comedic filmmakers, they're rewriting up until the movie airs. They screen it for test audiences, they reshoot and rewrite. So I just want you to know your script can always be better, and even the greatest filmmakers keep rewriting. But make sure you go into the contest with a really strong draft by running it by people. By the way, people sometimes hire script consultants to give them an opinion. You can certainly do that, but you don't necessarily need to do that. There are some people, they might even be on this call. I do script coverage, but I do it as a story editor, so I'm quite expensive. But there are people in Toronto, and I have someone in Vancouver too, who will do that for a more affordable rate, who can vet your script, who are contest winners themselves. But once again, you don't have to do that. You don't have to spend any money. You just want to make sure that you have outside objective opinions about the quality of your script. And once again, you can also do it on a whim. I had a student in one of my 5-day challenges. I do these 5-day premise challenges, and her challenge was so funny. And then once she didn't win the challenge, but she was like a runner up. She said, you know what? I love my premise. I'm going to take 2 weeks and write the feature. She wrote a vomit draft in 2 weeks, and then she immediately submitted it for coverage in LA to We Screenplay, which is a super ballsy move, by the way. You don't want to like submit a script that's not ready for professional coverage in LA, but she did, because We Screenplay is very affordable. It's under $100. And she ranked in the 93 percentile on her vomit pass. So that was a bold move, but it's a move you can do. You just don't want to have any low marks on coverage in LA, because that stuff gets around, but that is certainly something you can do. All right. The other thing that you might not realize is you should be prepared not only with your script, but also at some point between when you submit the script and when you win, because you might win, prepare as if you're going to win. You want to have a synopsis, a one sheet, a lookbook, or a pitch deck. So if you're submitting a feature, you want to have a lookbook ready. You want to have a pitch deck ready. If you're writing television, you definitely want a short synopsis and a longer synopsis. You want a bio. These are all marketing things that you need to have if you win. Because you're going to be asked for these as a winner if you get interviewed, if you get presented to managers or agents. So I just want you to keep in the back of your mind, you're not only dealing with the script you've written, you want to have all your marketing materials and sales materials ready as well. Okay, so on to the business of preparing for the season ahead. I guess every year the same sort of contests repeat their cycle over and over again, and new ones pop up all the time. It struck me this morning that I really should have, wow, listen to those sirens. A lot of COVID in Toronto. I don't know if that's why there's sirens, but it struck me this morning that I really should create a document with all the deadlines. If I can do that in the next few days, I'm going to email everybody with that document. Of course, it changes every year, but I can easily do that for you guys, so you can strategize your year ahead by deadlines, depending on the genre of your piece. I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner. It's funny, I never did that, but I should have. I think that would be a great thing to do, so you can make decisions ahead of time and sort of budget accordingly. So, okay, now Phil, as those of you who are filmmakers, and I know there are a bunch of filmmakers here too, we budget for marketing our short films or our feature films. We budget a certain amount of our budget to get it out there into film festival competitions. But as writers, it's not really been our habit for most of us to budget for the marketing of our screenplay. And I realized last year, like when I started this whole journey, so I had a partner, thankfully. Like I wrote the screenplay, but the producer who brought me the screenplay, he's a producer director, and he brought me the story. So we're co-credited on the script. I'm credited as the writer. He's the director, story by. I was lucky in that sense because we got to share the costs. It was just as valuable to me. I mean, he could have theoretically paid for all the costs, but he didn't have to. Like it's a write-off. This is the other thing you got to remember. If you work as a writer or are actively trying to work as a writer or a filmmaker, these are 100% tax write-offs in most countries. So but you still got to put the money up front. So for our 7 wins, I'll tell you that my marketing budget, I didn't really think about it ahead of time, but I can tell you retroactively, we spent about $1,100 US. And so that's 550 US between us. Oh, I should show you one of the beautiful, here, I'm going to go grab one of my awards. This is one of the awards I won. It's so beautiful. This was a Best Screenplay Award at the Female Eye Film Festival in Toronto. You may or may not have heard about the Female Eye, but it's fantastic. It's been around for 18 years. And it has an incredible script development program. That sculpture, by the way, it's made by an artist, and the actual sculpture is worth $600. So it's a really beautiful piece, right? Very femme and very, very, very unique. So it's an actual art piece in my house. But I won 2 of those. So I gave one to Maz, the director, and I took the second one. I was the first person ever to win 2 major awards, grand prizes at the Female Eye: Best Screenplay and Best Fresh Voice. Now that was a surprise to me. Actually, we were quite shocked that we not only won 1, but we won 2. And it was the thing that sort of set us off on this journey of, well, what else can we win? If a major enough festival like that, because listen, Female Eye, if you've never applied, any Canadians who have a woman on the writing team, you should definitely apply for Female Eye. Their script development. So they were voted in Movie Maker magazine top 50 festivals worth the entry fee. For the entry fee of $100, if you get accepted, most of the scripts, I don't know how many actually entered. I think 25 got accepted. You get put through a development program where you get a live read through of your script with professional actors. You get to pitch producers. They're all Canadian producers, really, and distributors. You get to, if you want to, participate in a live pitch for more money, and you get to win awards. I think they have something like 8 different grand prizes that you can win. So it was quite worth it. And it's actually the thing I love about the Female Eye Film Festival in Toronto is that women from all over the world take part. There were women from Turkey and India and Mexico, and like just all these different, and just so talented. And it's a mix of, it's not only centered on screenwriters and it's not only centered on filmmakers. It equally helps both. Now, I already knew about Female Eye because I had won an award with them in the past. I had won the silver, like it's called Best Reserve Screenplay, for one of my scripts in 2016, which I had also written with a partner, but a different writing partner. Directors often come to me to write scripts. So I had the inside track on Female Eye, but that's a really highly recommended festival if you have a female on your team or you are a female writer. Okay, where was I? Oh yes. So once we won those 2 awards, we thought, okay, what else can we do? And screenwriting contests, if you haven't noticed, can be pretty expensive, right? Because they have to pay readers, and they have to pay multiple levels of readers along the way. They'll have different readers at the first stage, and they might get thousands of scripts. So the last one I won, which was called We Screenplay Diverse Voices, they only had 1,800 entrants. And I say only, like that's nothing compared to some of the other competitions I've won or placed in. I've placed in, like they'll get 5,000 scripts. So that's something to consider. And so that's why the fees are so high. They actually have to pay people. And when you enter a screenwriting contest, pay careful attention to what you get. I always go through all the rules, first of all, to see if I'm eligible. Sometimes I'm not eligible as a Canadian, for example. Sometimes I'm not eligible because I'm part of a team. Sometimes I'm not eligible. Sometimes there's like diversity requirements. So I'm over 40, I'm well over 40. So some screenwriting competitions encourage that, all of that stuff. So you want to make sure you read all the rules, and you also want to make sure that you own the rights, that you maintain your rights, even if you win. Sorry, I'm going to mute all because I hear. Even if you win, or even if you don't, you just want to make sure that you retain all the rights. 95% of contests, you retain all the rights, but there are some, I'm trying to think, there's an example of one that gives you like $30,000 to make your short if you win, but they own it. So they hire the director. So you want to definitely vet that. You also want to read the rules and see what you get if you win, because if you're going to spend $100 on a screenplay entry, which it can often be, you want to make sure that if you come out the other end, you're going to get something like notes. And some contests offer notes just for entering, by the way, which is fantastic, because notes are valuable. You want to hear what an objective reader thinks of your screenplay. Of course, it's just one person's opinion, so it's not like their opinion is going to make or break, but it does certainly help, especially if you hear the same note over and over again. So yes. So oh my God, I think I'm going to end up talking 45 minutes. I just looked at the time, but that's okay, right? So yes, look at what you get. Notes are good. Sometimes you get a live read through. What you're really looking for, especially if you're trying to build your screenwriting career, is that high level, legit managers and agents and production companies in Los Angeles are going to read your script. Any screenwriting competitions that have that is much more appealing to me as a new writer, because I'm a new writer, even though I've been writing for 10 years, because I'm just now being shopped for representation. So I'm a new writer. It's important to me that I get read. And you'll see people poo-pooing screenwriting competitions saying winning is no guarantee of getting read. Absolutely. Unless you join a contest where that's the guarantee of the prize and you win, because that's certainly, they have to, they guarantee that as part of the win, right? And you just want to look at they'll often post who the judges are, who the final judges are, because there'll be different categories. So once for quarterfinals, it's all dependent on that first reader's opinion. So you're at the mercy of that first reader, and first readers range from people who are really experienced at reading screenplays to like people in film school just barely learning about screenwriting, just trying to scrape a living by for $20 an hour or sometimes less. So you're really at the mercy of that person, which can be a good or bad thing, because they can be your general audience, but they really might not get your film at all. And so you have to allow for that. Just know that you can be rejected. It's just like when you're an actor, you can be rejected for reasons that have nothing to do with you. You look like the director's wife, or, you're writing in a genre that people don't understand. I've had readers like not understand what we were trying to do with the magic realism aspect of the script. And then I've had other readers saying, this is the most brilliant thing. It made me cry, right? So you have to lose your attachment to people's opinions about your script, but enter enough contests that you can get a gauge. It is one way to help you gauge the marketability of your script, placing in contests. I do believe that if you enter enough of them. Okay. And of course, if you strategize a timeline, so the great thing about me doing that document, I have to do 3 years of taxes. So as soon as that's done, I'll do that document and email everybody who registered for this call. But the price goes up as you hit different deadlines. So a contest might have 4 different deadlines through the course of a year. And the earlier you apply, the more money you save. So you can strategize, you can maximize your script competition budgeting dollars by entering earlier. And by the way, the readers are less stressed out at those beginning stages of the screenplay contest. So you're more likely to get a better response anyway by not submitting at the last minute. Now, I have submitted at the last minute and had good results, but that is not the ideal scenario for the reader. So bear them in mind. You definitely use a good tool to enter competitions. And when I say a tool, I mean like there are really great websites. I prefer Coverfly now. I started on Film Freeway, but then I discovered Coverfly, and I actually think they're a far superior tool for specifically for screenwriting competitions. They just have a really great system of being able to integrate. Now, they haven't been able to integrate 3 of my 7 awards because they don't recognize, for example, Female Eye, even though it's been around for 18 years. So there's still some and Austin Film Festival, Austin Screenwriting Competition, one of the greatest competitions there is for screenwriters, is not on Coverfly yet. And that's because Austin themselves, same with Female Eye, had not registered on them. So there are some limitations, but the way that it's structured, the way someone said they just wrote a few pages of notes. That's awesome. Thank you. Yes, the way that it's structured is just very easy. It's just very easy to track your wins, very easy to apply. Their coverage, so they're tied to We Screenplay, like they have a relationship with We Screenplay. I'm going to tell you a story about We Screenplay that might sound terrible, but it's actually a great story. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But I just want to make sure. So some of the other sites you might be familiar with are Movie Bites, BYTES, Film Freeway. I like Film Freeway for films, but I like Coverfly for scripts. And Movie Bites is sort of a new competitor. And I know there are a few others. I really think Coverfly is the leader. And now Coverfly has the red list, which is sort of their version of the blacklist. So if you get enough wins and enough good coverage points, it'll track that for Hollywood, and you get, if you score above 600, you're on the red list, and then industry can request to read your script. They can request it at any point, but if you're on the red list, you're much more likely to get read by industry. So, and you can choose to turn off that option or turn it on. So highly recommend Coverfly. It's free to be a member, so I don't know why someone would not want to be on Coverfly. Okay, so some people ask me about, is it better to enter a lot of small contests or just the big ones? And you remember how I told you that story about my friend in Toronto who created a screenwriting, he's one of the small ones, right? His is one of the small ones. And there's not really much a lot of the smaller competitions can do for you other than give you that laurel. So I have a bias that is because of my experience with this person against small competitions. However, there is also something to be said for collecting a lot of laurels. I know a lot of filmmakers who they avoid the big competitions, and with their films, they'll get some obscure, like they'll get 10 laurels from, very obscure competitions. I think you get scrutinized by the competitions, the laurels that you have. So I do, because when I know that when I went to managers, they're like, tell me the exact competitions you won, and they would react based on what I said. So it really does make a difference. So if you only have a limited number of marketing dollars to enter competitions, I would stick with the tried and true big ones, unless you have a personal connection to some of them, to some of those smaller ones, because there can be, and I would not classify Female Eye as a smaller one. I would say it's a lesser known one. It's not one of the big 10, but it's been around for 18 years. So so it's not like an unknown, and it's not, and it actually does guarantee you something for entry. So small, medium, large, I guess, right? So I have a few medium ones, like one of my laurels is from Filmatic, which is not huge, but it's not small either. And the rest are all, and besides Female Eye, the rest are all very, very big competitions. Oh no, there's Edinburgh, right? Edinburgh was an outlier. Let me tell you about that one, because that's an interesting story. So I came in second place internationally at the Edinburgh Scriptwriting Competition, which is different from the Edinburgh Film Festival, which I've had a film in the past. And it was the second year of that festival. And the reason I entered it, even though I had, well, I wanted European judges on my project. I wanted to, because I had a lot of feedback from North Americans, but I had not had any European feedback. So I did enter Edinburgh expecting a European judge. By the way, the judge for that contest, the final judge, who gave us the most brilliant set of notes I've ever had on any project, was from New Zealand. So very odd, but that's what happened. So Edinburgh, so that was one of my rationale. And the other rationale was that they guaranteed time. They guaranteed that a manager in LA would read your script. They named the manager. I wasn't too familiar with him, but and they guaranteed that they would try and get the writers as much exposure as possible if you were a finalist, which I was, as second place. So even though that was a small and little known sort of screenwriting competition, I did take a chance, and it really paid off, because after Female Eye, that was the next award I won. They interviewed me and the director. They did, I talked to this manager. He was great, because so this manager promised to read everybody's first 15 pages and give them a critique. And he gave us such a great critique that we did a whole rewrite based on his notes that I know made the film better. So we got notes from Female Eye, by the way, as well. I rewrote based on that. Then the second rewrite came after that Edinburgh win. And every other win, I would just keep writing. The other festivals that had given us awards, every time we won another one, I would write back to say, thank you for recognizing us in the early stages. The film has won, or the script has won another award, and we greatly value your input, because it was really based on their notes that the script got better. By the way, there's something else. If you're strategizing your wins based on IMDb, so IMDb will let you post your screenwriting wins. You may or may not know that. They definitely let you post your film festival wins as well, but they will not allow you to post any competitions that haven't been around for at least 5 years. So I could not post my Edinburgh win. By the way, they've totally renamed themselves. They're now the Steam Punk Screenwriting Competition. There was some kind of there were, by the way, they were great. There was some kind of legal action taken by someone who opposed the name, so they completely rebranded. So hopefully they'll, in 3 more years, they'll still count my win, even though we won in the second year. But yeah, IMDb will only let you include wins from competitions that have been around for at least 5 years. So that's something to keep in mind if you're adding your contest wins to your IMDb profile, which, by the way, you should, because people actually do read those. Okay, so yes, read the rules, see what you get. If it's worth it to you, it's too easy to go crazy and just spend all your money on competitions. Don't do that. Be strategic. And it's easy to be, because there's maybe 10 that are really, really totally worth it. And then you would, based on the genre of your script, you would sort of amend that list. Okay, yes. So you're at the mercy of your first reader. And I'm going to tell you a story about that. At the stage that this story happened, I had already won 5 awards and honors. I include anything above quarterfinalist as an honor. So semifinalist and above, right? Quarterfinalist, it's easy enough to get to that level. But anything above that is something. So at this point, I had won 5, including 2 grand prizes, right? And I got some coverage back, and I paid for coverage. So very rarely do I pay for coverage, but because we had rewritten the screenplay 2 times at that point, I wanted to hear about the specific notes on that script. So it's always an option. It's sometimes an option, depending on what contest you enter, that you can pay for coverage. And we thought, okay, let's try it. We got the coverage back, and it was horrifying. We ranked in the 43 percentile. They didn't understand the genre. They didn't understand what we were going for. The reader could barely write in proper sentences, in proper English. They could barely understand screenplay format. So one of the comments we got continually was, wow, this script follows perfect screenplay structure, but hides it so well that it's hard. It doesn't feel formulaic. This coverage person wrote, this doesn't follow any screenplay structure, and the writer should really learn it. Which is hilarious, because I teach it, and I've been a story editor for much longer than I've been a writer, right? So I was so good that they couldn't see the structure, which is the note I usually get. But in this case, they were like, this person should really learn structure. So because I know what good coverage looks like, and because I know and listen, not everybody is going to love your script, even as strong as, but people should be able to recognize its values, whether or not it's for them, right? They should say, okay, this is well written, but it's not a genre that is popular, or it's really not for me. Like accounting, you can't account for everybody's taste, and that's totally fine. You will, we didn't get into, for example, Austin at all, not even a quarterfinal. So we reapplied this year, by the way, and I'll tell you that story in a bit. But yes, we didn't get into Sundance. But other people were like, this is really a Sundance project, etc. So you're going to hear all kinds of contrasting opinions, and that's all good. That's all part of the game. But I could actually point to so many things in this coverage, and I'm really glad I paid for this coverage, by the way, because I was able to go to the company. Don't ever be afraid to write directly to the company and say, and I would say, listen, I understand our script is not for everyone, but this is really subpar coverage, and I paid for this coverage, and I'll tell you why it's subpar coverage as a story editor. And I listed all the things, and the company apologized profusely. They reviewed it and said, we greatly agree with you. We're so sorry. This was a brand new reader. You never know, right? When you're entering a contest, you're at the mercy of the reader. This was a brand new reader who we were still testing. Let us give it to a senior reader, and we'll do that for free. So they gave it, we got a review, which is great, because we ranked in the 97th percentile. So we got 97% from that reader. The reader said the script made them cry and it changed their life. Like literally, these are quotes from so this is how much you are at the mercy of a reader. Okay. And we actually won a grand prize in that contest. So if I hadn't spoken up for myself, that wouldn't have happened. And that grand prize actually is changing my career. So I want you to never be shy to speak up for yourself, just with the knowledge that you have to have reasonable grounds to do so. But I did learn to speak up for myself. I really felt it was unfair coverage the first time, and I could state very clearly why. Okay. And yeah, you're still always going to be at the mercy of the first reader. Don't be afraid to communicate to festival organizers. So we didn't place at all in Austin, and Austin sent a follow-up email to all the applicants saying, thank you for applying to our festival. Let us know how your script is doing. And I wrote back to the festival organizers and I said, thank you so much for reaching out. I just wanted to let you know we've won 7 awards. 3 of them are grand prizes, but somehow we didn't even manage to place in the quarterfinals at your festival. And I was really surprised by that. And they said, oh, really? Well, please apply again this year. So I haven't heard back if we're going to even place in the quarterfinals. But I was like, I just want to speak up about it. Not because I think my script is the greatest in the world, but just to not even get to the basic level entry. I just felt like, okay, we maybe had a reader who didn't get it, and maybe we didn't. Maybe our script is not an Austin script. But don't be afraid to communicate with them, especially when they reach out first. There's also a genre thing I want you to consider. If you have a script that's on the border between comedy and drama, which a lot of my students do, a lot of my students actually end up writing dramas, even though I train them in comedy. And so you end up with a dramedy. So this magic realism piece has a high amount of tragedy, but it's a comedy in the sense that Life is Beautiful is a comedy, right? There's a lot of death, and there's a lot of war, and there's a lot of racism, and there's a lot of things that our main character goes through, violence. He loses his daughter, but it's a comedy. It's a film about hope. So you'll notice in my laurels, for the same project, I have an award. I have a semi-finalist award in Filmatic Drama Screenplay Competition, and I have a finalist award in Screencraft Comedy. So that was a little bit of a clue for us as to how our script was being perceived. And when we marketed it as a comedy, it was much better received. By the way, right now, because of the situation in the world, because of COVID, people are looking for comedies. So if you have a comedy, I mean, really go for it. But because there was we were riding the line of tragedy and comedy, I just wanted to, there's sometimes when you apply, they can say, do you have a message for the reader? You're never allowed to say, I want this specific reader. You're never allowed to do that. But what I did in that case was, this is a comedy the way Life is Beautiful is a comedy, so that the reader could get my tone right away. So don't be afraid to make those kinds of tonal statements if they're really critical to the way people perceive your project. Okay. And yeah, so that's a bit of a genre trick if your script rides a line. By the way, if you have a genre piece that's specifically horror, I mean, you got to go for it, because there's contests specifically driven to horror, to fantasy, to sci-fi, and you really want to get it circulated in those, because I'm not as familiar with that world, because all my students write in those genres, but I don't. So I'm not as familiar, but I know they're out there. I know a guy, he wasn't one of my students, he was one of my friends, who won the first, what is it called? First Fresh Blood or something. It's one of the, was it Screencraft? It might be the Screencraft horror contest. He won 10 years ago, and he got a manager out of that. So no, not Fresh Voices, Andrea, but it was Fresh Blood. It was specifically for horror. So yeah, those contests can be great because there's a smaller pool of people, and they're also more way into their genre. So if you have a genre script, really get it out in the contest circuit. I really highly recommend it. I've heard some great stories from people. And maximize diversity opportunities if you fall into any diversity categories. So these are the ones recognized in Hollywood. Anyone of color, of course, absolutely. If you are queer, LGBTQ plus, amazing. Women, and anyone over 40, believe it or not. So when I won Diverse Voices, it was as a queer woman over 40, well over 40. So yeah, I could have been a man. I could have been a straight man over 40. You're still allowed in that competition. The reason being that Hollywood doesn't hire people over 40. Well, they do now, but because they're being told to try harder with our age category. But yes, so diversity, there's many different festivals geared towards specific aspects of diversity. And I would say really go for it if you fall into one of those categories, because they're looking for you. That was one of the huge things I learned this year, is that Hollywood is looking for our stories if we fall into any of the different categories, and they're looking for new stories. And very often it's diversity of experience. So the CBS, this is something I learned through my win at Diverse Voices. CBS diversity program considers diverse life experiences. So if you were like a military officer or you were a priest and you want to write stories about that, that's a diverse experience that is not in the norm. So consider that, and you can also gear your strategy of which ones you're going to enter. And by the way, some festivals have multiple categories within them. Like Austin has a category for films that can be produced for under $10 million. We definitely entered that category. There's a BIPOC category if you're a person of color or indigenous. There's what are the other categories in Austin? There's every year they change them up, and same with Sundance, right? There's very specific categories. Yes, and having a disability, absolutely, Andrea. I sometimes forget that, but I have screenwriting students with disabilities who are exceptional writers, by the way. So yes, let's not forget that category. That is actually one of the very specific ones in We Screenplay Diverse Voices. So maximize those opportunities. Okay, so what happens if you win? Oh my God, I'll try to wrap it up so that we can get enough questions. I can stay longer, by the way. I just don't want to like take all your time if we go. So what happens if you win? So you'll get what the screen competition. Yeah, exactly. Nika's saying, how do you even describe diverse experiences? I guess they'll know. Some of them ask you. So when we got down to the finalist stage at Diverse Voices, they asked us why we feel, now Diverse Voices has very concrete categories, but let's say CBS Diverse Writing Program, the TV Writers Program at CBS, they would ask you to create a one-page statement about why you feel and that's what they would base it on. True story. But yeah, no, We Screenplay asked us how our cultural background or our sexual preference or our age makes us a diverse voice for Hollywood once we got to the finalist stage. So what happens if you win? So if you win, if you're a finalist, you often will get something. So if you're in one of the major competitions like Final Draft Big Break, you might get a something just for being a finalist, right? It depends how many finalists there are. If there are like 10 finalists, you're probably going to get your script circulated. It depends what they say in the rules, but some of them will circulate your script. Some of them will give you software, right? You might get a copy of Final Draft. Some of them, well, they'll promise you different things. But if you are the overall, what you can expect probably is some really good level notes. So the notes we got at Female Eye, at We Screenplay, and at the Edinburgh competition, exceptional notes, like notes that you would pay someone doing coverage for you a few $100, to get in the industry. Very, very worth it. So you definitely can expect that. So I'm going to quickly tell you what happened with our Diverse Voices win, because that was the best bang for our buck in terms of what we ended up getting as writers. And then I'll open it up for questions. So every contest is different. So Diverse Voices, I want to give them a plug because they're a fairly new competition. They're specifically aiming at diversity. They're incredibly well connected. So they're connected to Coverfly. They're connected. We Screenplay is becoming a name. There are, when I say the top 10 festivals, you guys probably know, but I can say like the Nichols Fellowship is a huge one that the Academy runs. Austin Screenwriting, of course, is a huge one. Final Draft Big Break, Script Pipeline, Screencraft. So Screencraft comedy is a big one for me and my students because we specifically work in comedy. I've had a lot of people place different levels of those contests. And I was a finalist. I was so proud because that's all the comedy people are at Screencraft Comedy. What else am I missing? Blue Cat. I've never dealt with Blue Cat, so I don't know, but they're recognized. Also, Page International is a big one, like a huge one. I've had students place in that. I'm probably forgetting. Well, Sundance is a lab, but Sundance, of course, it's not a contest, it's a lab. I'm probably forgetting some. If you type in the chat, Page International, definitely, Tawny, that's definitely, yeah, I had some of my comedy feature writing students place with their dramas in that, so I was really proud of them. So what happened with us was there were 4 grand prize winners of Diverse Voices drama feature, and they put us into drama, comedy feature, 1 hour 1 hour TV and half-hour TV, all the 4 winners, and you can be a team as well and so we were a team. We went in as a team. Normally would get flown to Hollywood. A lot of these competitions would fly you to Hollywood, but it's COVID, so we did it all virtually this year. But what they did to compensate for that was they gave us an extra day of meetings. So normally you would get 4 days of meetings. We got 5. And they organized a whole bunch of incredible things, including a live read of our screenplay with SAG actors, of course. And that was the second live read we had, because we had one at Female Eye, and it was great. Um, uh, Feedback from a top story editor, as well as we gave each other peer feedback, and I met some great writers. Like, I mean, I love these women. They were all women except my screenwriting partner Mazdak. Yeah, they were some of the best people I'd ever met. So I was so happy just to be in the same league as them. Then they brought in past winners to tell us who they got, what shows they were staffed on, and who they got signed with, and that was really inspiring. And they said, you're not going to get signed in the first week, but there's a possibility you'll get signed this year. So just keep going with the meetings. And then they briefed us. They had industry mentors come in. We had 2 producers and a high level TV screenwriter come in and share their personal journeys and give us advice. Then they had Carol Kirshner come in, who's a career coach, and she runs the CBS diversity program and the WGA showrunner program, just give us career advice and talk about her programs. And then we had individual meetings with managers. Some people had them with agents. And production companies, and we were able to pitch our script. Some of them had read our script because they were final judges, and some of them we were pitching in the room. And I've never, ever in my life been able to attend generals in LA as a writer until I won that contest. So for people to say as a blanket statement that screenwriting competitions bring you nothing, they're wrong. It depends on the contest, and it depends what you make of it. Because one of the things I learned from this competition, Hollywood wants our stories, especially diverse writers. They want to know that you have more than one project. So ideally you're not only coming in, that's the thing I forgot to say at the beginning. Don't only be ready with your lookbook or your pitch deck and your script and all that stuff. Be ready with your next 3 ideas to talk about in the room, because they're going to ask you. And it's funny because every single person I had a meeting with, I had meetings together with Mazdak, who was the director of the project, and some I had just on my own as a writer, because you're allowed to say, this is my goal. At We Screenplay, they're like, what is your goal? Is your goal to get staffed? Is it to get for me, my goal was to get a manager, right? So I had different meetings. Maz's goal was to get the film made, of course, right? Both good goals for both of us. And all of the managers said, okay, I need to know that you've got other stories ahead of you. And all of them asked for this was a great process, because I pitched other ideas too, and they all zeroed in on the exact same one. And for those students who are in my 5-day challenge, you know the idea I'm talking about, because it's the same one I talk about in the challenge. That's the one every single manager wanted to read. So I know that that's the one I have to write next. And a couple of them have said to me already, and one of them's a big manager, send me that one. And based on that one, I'm going to decide whether or not to sign you. So that's been my story. Everyone's story is going to be different. I'll open it up to Q&A, because I don't want to sorry, I talked longer than I thought. And I see that there's a lot of questions. But I don't poo-poo screenwriting competitions, I guess is my big message. You can't win if you don't play. Okay, let's look at all these questions. Some of them are private and some of them are public. I'm going to scroll. By the way, I can stay longer if you can. Looks like we got a lot of questions. Are contests the most reliable entry point? Other than sending to contests and cold emailing, are there other ways of getting a script read? Oh, yes, absolutely. So I think it's a great way for a new writer to break in is through contests. Obviously, because I've been around doing it not through contests for almost 10 years and not that I didn't get traction. Like I said, I'm a union member, but that doesn't really mean anything. I'm a union member because I got a feature film option by a local producer. That film never got made. The union doesn't staff you. I just have status as a union writer. You can pitch directly to production. I've pitched directly to networks, which you can do. In Canada, we have we only have 3 really networks in Canada, so it's easy to pitch to all of them. Bell Media, CBC, and Shaw was the third one we pitched to. So very easy to do that without having representation with that. And this is in Canada. In the States, you kind of have to have representation to pitch to the networks. It's a little bit different. But I got no traction out of it. I've never gone for representation, which is my own fault, but Canada has a much more limited selection of agents and managers. So this wonderful experience has lit a fire under my butt to go, oh, representation, it actually matters who is behind you in LA, and even in Canada. And so why I never thought to go for it before is beyond me. But I guess I didn't realize it was such a positive experience. It was a really positive experience. I just know that for a number of writers, it was their way in, is winning a contest. And like, not every writer, obviously, no, but for a number of writers, if you're a new writer without representation, like how would I get generals without a manager or an agent, without winning a contest? Almost impossible. By the way, I have a 30-year track record in the film business as a script supervisor, and I've always been able to get meetings based on that. But they don't take me seriously as a writer because they know me as their script supervisor. I work for some of the biggest people in Hollywood as a script supervisor. They're always happy to take a meeting with me, but they consider it, sort of appeasing me or letting me practice for when I'm a real writer. Whereas the moment you win a big competition, you're suddenly a writer. So this is the first year I've been taken 100% seriously as a writer, even to my longtime, producer mentors. Okay, let's see. Oh, of course, my screen is stuck. Okay, there we go. And people are liking the idea of a calendar. Yeah, I think I got to do that. And I'll do that for my writing students anyway. As a producer, I have bought scripts from Inktip. Oh yeah, I have no affiliation to them, just use them. That's a great idea too. So producers buy off Coverfly, The Blacklist, Inktip. I forgot about Inktip. Yes, so it is good to have stuff out there, definitely. I've gotten some weird requests on Coverfly. I had a producer saying, I'd like to buy your script, but I need to make it for 200,000. I know for a fact there's no way our script could be made for 200,000. We've had it budgeted professionally at a minimum of 5 million, but it's more like 8 million, right? So I thought, well, that's a weird request. But so hopefully, like when people approach you on Inktip, it's legit. But yes, that's great. There's also multiple deadlines. Yes, that's right, Emily. I'll put the multiple deadlines in that document. That's why I want to do it when I have some time. It might take a week. I hope that I can get it to you guys soon. Some contests close at the end of the year, but have a series of early bird. Yes, and the early birds are cheaper. So you want to definitely try and arrange to, if you have a draft that you love at an early date, definitely go for that. Did I see industry representation at the festival there? So I think you mean at Female Eye, Nika, because this was earlier on in the talk. Female Eye, tons of industry representation, but only Canadian industry. So that's a little bit different. So I met a lot of Canadian producers, but you know what? I personally know a lot of American producers and some really, really high-end producers. So it wasn't exciting to me at all. I'm being I don't mean that to sound as snobby as it does, but it wasn't particularly exciting for me because I knew my budget was above sort of the levels that they would be working at in Canada. But yeah, definitely. Tawny, from what I've heard, the readers only read the first 10 pages for the first round. I've heard that too. And some festivals had admitted to that. But when you buy coverage, right, that's a good reason to buy coverage. They have to read your whole script. I don't always recommend paying for coverage because it's a lot of money, but they'll have to read your whole script. So that's something. Tawny, from what I've heard, the readers only, yeah, oh, sorry, that's the same one. Thank you for bringing me in. I just left Niagara. Oh, very nice. Nika, I've heard that the more you win at those competitions, the less the script is considered marketable. Can you talk about that? Interestingly enough, I don't know the answer to that. I know that once I started winning, I kept winning, and that might just be because I kept rewriting. But if you're a grand prize winner at, we're going for Humanitas right now, which is another good one. Humanitas, if you have a screenplay that is beneficial to humanity and is about hope, which our screenplay is about hope, Humanitas is a great one. But I think it would be hard to win Humanitas and something else at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like, because they really, really do plug. It depends on how much the contest really plugs its people. And okay. No worries, Joey. Joey was late, no problem. Edinburgh Film Festival. Yeah, that's a different, Andrea, that's the film festival. That's different from, you don't understand the acronym IMDb. Internet Movie Database, imdb.com, is where anyone in the film business you'll see, you can look up anyone in the film business to see their work history and festival wins. Which competitions are, so I think, Mandy, I said them all, right? I said Austin, Nichols, Screencraft, Page International, Final Draft, Big Break, Pipeline, Script Pipeline, I think does things for people. Sundance, which is not really a script competition, it's a lab. Yes, you liked my standing up for myself story. I liked it too, because I'm not someone who normally would have done that, but this whole year has lit a fire under my butt. Haley, do you think social change is a valid criteria in selecting a topic for developing a script? Absolutely. Well, that's what the Humanitas Prize is all about. So their scripts are about social change, but on a level, yeah, that benefits humanity and usually is about hope. And they do TV and film. Fresh Voices is a newer one, right, Andrea? I'm not as familiar with them. Dimitri, Screencraft seems big on horror. I'm planning on submitting to them. The Screencraft horror one is really good, Dimitri. I think that's the one my friend won, but their comedy one is fantastic. Yes, neurodiversity. Yes, Louise, neurodiversity. I would absolutely, I don't know if every festival would include that, but I would think that anyone who includes diversity would include neurodiversity and disabilities. Absolutely. And you're right, Shannon, it's not directly mentioned in the contest always. It is in We Screenplay Diverse Voices, but even if this is another thing I learned, I would submit anyway. Like even if you think like it's borderline, submit. And if they love your script, then explain, well, I'm neurodiverse or I have a disability. And that is a very well touted diversity category in Hollywood. So you can back yourself up with statistics. Okay. Oh, yes. Thank you, Shannon. Scriptapalooza. That is another very well-regarded one. Blue Cat does screenplay competitions and they have a short film festival. I've heard great things about Blue Cat as a screenwriting competition. I've just never entered them. Tommy, I'm a senior reader for Motor City Nightmares International Film Festival screenplay on. Oh, I didn't know you had a screenwriting competition. Tommy, so Motor City Nightmares, huge horror conference, like very important horror conference. Check it out. Enter your Dimitri, enter Tommy's festival. Short-term 12 was a Nichols Fellow. Oh, congratulations. If Tori's on this call, Tori has been in the top 1% of Nichols twice, and she got a manager that way. So even being a finalist, if it's a prestigious enough competition like that, it can get you representation. Someone just said they just got invited to be an artist in residence and I'm thrilled to write or film. Fantastic. I don't know which one you're talking about, but congratulations. Mandy, how does a Canadian go about getting representation in the States? Do you need a US visa, green card? Great question. I asked every single manager this. They didn't care where I was from. They just cared that I could write. I said, do I have to move to the US? They said, it depends. If you want to work in television, you probably have to move to the US, but if you want to keep writing features, you can live anywhere you want to. I do want to move to the US. I just want to move to New York instead of LA. So it's a different boat because most TV writers' rooms are in LA. So eventually you will need to get a green card if you are planning to write in TV, but they will represent you. Every manager said, I've got clients in the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US. And I'm sure Ireland, Louise, too. Could your friend share the list of good contests for horror? Tommy, if you have time to put that in the chat, if you know of other contests besides Motor City Nightmares, can you let Dimitri know? But Motor City Nightmares, of course, Tommy gets incredible guest speakers to that one. Nika, yes. Jotham, yes. I don't know what you said yes to because it's retroactive, but how are you copywriting your submitted scripts? Great question. I do WGA East and West. Oh, I just do WGA. I do one or the other. I don't do both. I'm told the most reliable way, by the way, is to register it with the US Library of Congress. I'm told that they will actually pay your legal fees, whereas registering your script for copyright with one of the WGA or East or West, they will not pay your legal fees. So that was a hot tip. I can't remember. I saw someone say that at a film festival. So US Library of Congress, better way to copyright. But I do WGA East or West, depending on where the contest is, I guess. Most of the contests are in LA. How much do the competitions follow each other in their wins? I would imagine not a lot, unless you're in the top 10. I'm sure everyone at Austin knows who won Sundance, who won, Page, I'm sure, but there's literally hundreds of competitions. They can't really all follow each other. Will this talk be posted later? Yes, Lisa, I'm going to post it in our alumni group. If you sell your script, how much of a range would you get for it? Melanie, that's a great question. I guess if it's option first, but ultimately how much do you feature sell for? There's not one answer to this question. I talked to, when I was I'm Paul Feig's script supervisor. I asked Dylan Clark, the producer of The Heat, how much he paid for that script, and he said it was about 450,000 US. It was a first-time writer. She was the intern at Parks and Rec, the writer of The Heat, and he said that's all he had in an escrow fund when he offered her, when he read her script and said, I'm giving you all the money in my escrow fund. Her agent tried to get into a bidding war with other people, and he was like, hey, don't mess around with. He knew the agent really well, so that's what he ended up paying. That's not a high fee and it's not a low fee. Writers Guild minimums, I don't know what it is in the United States. In Canada, it's around, because you have to include the treatment, the first draft, and subsequent drafts. It's more like 250,000 Canadian. That's if you're a union member or if the producer agrees to go by WGA or WGC minimums, right? But people have been paid as much as $1 million for spec scripts. You've heard stories about people more. I would say realistically, if you're a new writer, expect a couple of 100,000, like really. And if you're like, if it's a super low budget film, it might be, and you're not a union member, they could go much lower. I know that some of my students do freelance work for 25,000 for a feature. Like, it's really depends where you are. There's not really a real answer to that question, but I like that example from The Heat because I thought it was a fair price to pay a new writer, right? And then ideally, if you can negotiate for a portion of the proceeds. I'm trying to remember, I was the script supervisor on my Big Fat Greek Wedding, and Nia Vardalos, I can't remember the selling price of her film, but she negotiated 1% points. And because the movie made 640 million or something internationally, she made something like $7 million. So it wasn't her writer's fee up front, it was her residual credit that she was able to negotiate. Stephanie says, in Toronto, Blood in the Snow and Toronto After Dark are great to check out. Oh, great. I assume those are horror. Email motorcitynightmares@gmail.com for more horror info. That's great. Thanks, Tommy. The Heat was super fun. Can you speak about the process of adapting books to scripts? So Jotham, that's not part of this call. I have been hired to adapt books to scripts, but that's not what we're talking about today. But that's a good idea for a future talk. I was actually going to create a course around that, but I wanted to wait till I sold something that I adapted. It's a whole different art form. It's not only books, you can adapt novellas, books, newspaper articles, etc. Can I talk more about residuals? Again, Louise, not part of this call, but residuals just means you negotiate a percentage of the gross or the net. And by the way, sometimes you can negotiate those fees and never see them because of the way creative accounting is done in Hollywood. But Nia was working with Tom Hanks's company, which is a very honest company. I have a lot of content around comedy screenwriting, and script supervision, which are the main things I teach. I also teach business, so you'll see some business talks on there. So Veronica asked, that's a great question. How many contests did you apply to in that period when I won the 7 awards? We applied to 12 contests and we won 7. So that was a good average. Here, I've posted the link from Stick to Script for anyone who's interested. And then someone else asked, is it better to apply to more or less contests? I think go for quality, not quantity. So I only applied to 12 because I only thought there were 12 worth applying for. I'm sure if I had time to research it deeper, I would have found some more. I found out that there is, so someone asked about a disability list for writing screenplays. That would be great. I don't know what they are. I just know We Screenplay Diverse Voices is openly about that. What you can do is go to coverfly.com and type in disability under contest searches and see what comes up. I think that's a good way to do it. You could also do that in Google. Write disability screenwriting contests, and that goes for any area that you're in. I think that would be great. And that would, and because new contests come up every day, especially in the diversity categories, I would keep going back and checking. In my alumni group for my writers, you'll notice I keep posting the people who are in there. I keep posting new ones I find like all the time. There's a lot in England for diversity. England's finally getting woke and posting a lot of diversity questions. Okay, I know I've gone over time. Thank you for staying. Any more questions? It's been nice to meet some of you for the first time, and nice to see some of my students again. Thank you. And yeah, feel free to email me if you have any questions that I didn't cover. My writing partner Dylan asks, oops, sorry, that scrolled by really fast and now I can't see it anymore. Let me see. Someone said my writing. Sorry, I've got to scroll up and find that comment. What are your major warning signs for potentially questionable screenwriting? Great question. Potential warning signs: look at the prizes. Obviously, if they seek to own your content, run away. You own your content. That's your goal. Whether it's terrible or not, it's your content. So whether or not they own, if they own your content, run away. If they don't have any prizes, so sometimes it's money prizes, but more often it's these are our judges. Like, make sure they're in a legitimate part of the industry. If you have some other, like I entered one in Florence only because that's the closest town to where my house in Italy is. And I thought, oh, it'd be nice to enter a competition. They didn't even look at our scripts. So I never know if the smaller competitions are any good at all, really. But really, yes. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Smooch. Thanks. I've never been called Smooch. I greatly enjoyed that. Oh yes, share my email, no problem. It's easy. I'll type it in, but it's Mondo Cinema, MONDOCINEMA @gmail.com. And I'm going to email everybody anyway. I'll email you the replay. I'll email you the discount code and the links. I just wanted it to give, actually, the discount code is for those who attended live. So live 47. But thank you so much. And I look forward to doing more talks. So if you have any suggestions, I've noted Jotham's suggestion about adapting books to screenplays. Great suggestion. I don't know when, but I'll do that one in future. Thank you.